Here we go. We are back again. I'm on a roll, guys. I'm on a roll. So once again, guys, welcome back to the channel, the Come Up channel. This is gonna be my first Green Beret on the channel, so super stoked. I had two Ranger Regiment guys on the podcast, so once again, it's gonna be my first Green Beret, so gonna be pretty awesome. So my guest is a former Green Beret and served a total of 10 years in the Army. Currently, what he's doing now, he's really just mentoring and coaching people, whether that be mental preparation or physical preparation. And those are, of course, things that we'll get into more down the line as the episode keeps going. But that's my guest. Welcome, my guest, John Hamilton.
Hey, I appreciate you having me here, man. Hopefully I can represent well.
Oh, yeah, you got to, man. The Preso Libro, man. Is that how
Yeah.
you say it?
Dio Presley Bear.
Oh, man. See, I
Yeah,
can't
no,
say
you're
it
good.
again.
DOL. DOL.
Yeah. So kind of like I've been trying to do the last couple episodes, guys, setting the expectations, giving you the what and the why of this video. So in terms of what we're going to be covering is, of course, we're going to start from the beginnings as far as growing up with John. From there, we'll get into decision to join the army, SFAS, or we'll get into his time in the 160th, going, putting in a packet to go SFAS, Q course, time as an ODA, how it was as a F and G. I won't say what the F, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, that's basically going to be kind of what we're going to be covering. And of course, we're going to get his, tips in regards to all those different topics as well, to kind of help you guys out who are looking to go down that path as well. And in terms of why, guys, I mean, hey, he has a plethora of experience. I mean, 10 years in special operations community. So why wouldn't you want to listen to the guy? He has a lot of, like I said, can help you mentally and physically. So he's gonna be the guy for sure to help you out with that. But first, all right. So in terms of the warm up questions, first one's gonna be, man. Hopefully this wasn't too bad, too hard. It's gonna be, what is your proudest accomplishment?
My proudest accomplishment is probably our trip to Afghanistan. And not necessarily for the mission, because obviously the way Afghanistan ended, but just being able to experience the missions and obviously working with the team and developing that bond on the team level and carrying out the particular missions. It was like, so I was obviously in the Army for 10 years, and I felt like the entire time you're in the Army, you're always training for, that real life experience, the applicable when you get to go out and actually do your job. So I think that part of my life of going to Afghanistan, actually doing what I just spent all those years training for, was a really great feeling and brought a lot of this sense of accomplishment.
Got you. This one might correspond, it might kind of be the same, but it's a little bit different. But what was one of the happiest moments in your life that you can recall, and why was it special to you?
Yeah, I would say probably one of the happiest moments I could recall is coming home and being with my family. Like obviously the accomplished side, the professional aspect of that is brings a lot of accomplishment, but coming home, being with your family after that experience, is really kind of an experience you don't get to experience, like enjoy outside of that realm. Like you have to go through intense turmoil to get that crazy dopamine level of seeing your family for the first time in a long, in a while, and after all of that, those tough times. So I think just coming home after those experiences was probably the happiest. And then I would say the stuff that I'm most proud about is doing the actual job.
Got you. And what is something you wish you knew 5 years ago?
5 years ago, I wish I knew more about investing. I wish I would have bought Bitcoin.
And two more. I got two more for you, man. This one's gonna be, what is the meaning of life for you?
The meaning of life for me is inspiring and doing the things that bring you fulfillment. Um, I think a lot of us struggle with finding fulfillment and what that really means to us, and we seek it out in monetary ways. Obviously, just making a joke about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I think the meaning of life is really just uh, kind of on capping what it is that brings us the most fulfillment, what it is that gets us out of bed and inspires us, gets us like chasing that fire and things like that. And for me, that's kind of coaching people to unlock their true potential. And then when I see them go out and and do great things, I get a ton of fulfillment from that.
Got you. Last one, John's gonna be: if you had to write a book about yourself, what would it be called, and what would it be about?
Ooh, that's a good question. Actually, I've not writing a book, but I've experimented with writing more lately because I think it's something that helps you develop your thoughts and really get to know you yourself at a deeper level. And I think if I were to write a book, it would be about um I would share my life experiences, both the bad and the good, and kind of inspire people to think about life in a different way and think about living their lives to the point of what brings them the most happiness and not living their lives by um, what other people want them to do. I think so often we're influenced by outside pressures like our parents or our friends, what they think our life should look like and what they think we should be doing with our time and all this stuff. But I think when you can really kind of identify what it is that you enjoy doing, regardless of what other people think, that's where you find happiness. So I think if I were to write a book, it would be about my experience in that because I used to be that kid, man. Like I just wanted to accomplish things so that my family would be proud of me, so that my peers would look up to me and all this stuff. And it wasn't until the last couple of years that kind of shifted.
Got you. Yeah, people are probably gonna be asking for a book now in your Discord and all that sort of like, man, where's the book coming out? But cool, man. Let's go ahead and get into growing up. Let's of course start with the basics. Just kind of when, where you were born, and how many siblings, if you had any siblings.
Yeah, so I kind of had a weird upbringing. I was born in Michigan. My parents split when I was really young, so I ended up moving out to Washington. And then from there, I moved 18 times before my 18th birthday. So I was all around eastern side of Washington. I was down in Oregon, moved down to Arizona for a little bit, back up to the west side of Washington. Um, and fast forward my freshman year of high school, my mom met this guy who was actually the dad of one of my best friends on the football team, and they ended up linking up. They got married, and then it was like a real stepbrother situation. But as far as siblings, I have one biological brother who also has some interesting stories. He's has a pretty nefarious background, so we came out very separate. We're like very close, but completely opposites when it comes to personality. And then I have 5 step siblings, one of which was my stepbrother that I played football with and all that. But I'm the youngest out of everybody.
Wow, that's a big family.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
mean,
big
I
family.
I only ever lived with my stepbrother Alex, who I've actually had on my I guess social media channel, but and the ones that were older were already out of the house by the time we met, so it was never like a crazy big household. I always lived with one brother at a time, but yeah, it's a pretty big family.
Got you. Before I kind of go into um your stepfather, I want to get into your biological father. Just because your biological father was a chronic alcoholic, and he was also a drug user at the time as well. I know he's sober from what you told me offline, but at the time he was dealing with that. How did that affect you as a kid?
I think I just made a video about it recently, but I think it turned me off a lot to alcohol, and it showed me the dangers of addiction early on. It was like growing up, man, he was everything revolved around alcohol. Anytime I was around my dad, it was he was drinking. This led to my biological brother being an alcoholic and dealing with his own set of addiction problems and things like that. So it from an early age, it really opened my eyes to the destructive powers of addiction, and how like deeply of a grasp addiction can have on a person and how much it can change their personality and turn them into this source of negativity. Like my dad and my brother were, I mean, they're great people. They're super kind-hearted, all this stuff, like never um would cross somebody when they're sober. But as soon as they their vices take control of their life, they get addicted to alcohol. My dad was a crack user, so that drug side of it, um, it controls their life, and they end up burning bridges, burning relationships, and burning other people in general to continue to feed that addiction, and it becomes literally priority number one for them. So I think that, like I said, it just opened my eyes, and it's always kind of been my guiding light of what the hell not to do. Like I always looked at my dad, and I looked at my biological brother when he started going down that path, and I looked at that and I was like, I don't want my life to look like that. I don't want to have everyone turn their backs on me, or um, cross people like that in the name of addiction. So I always kind of stayed away from that stuff. I turned to sports at an early age, and I think it really influenced my outcome.
Got you. And for a kid that is going through that, whether it's their mother or their father that is suffering from something like that, what kind of words of encouragement or guidance can you provide to them?
Yeah, man, it's an extremely hard situation because they're, it's your family and that's where you live. But just know that your life doesn't have to look like that. And you have the ability to put yourself in a different environment once time comes. Obviously, living under that roof, you're kind of uh, in a tough position, but surround yourself with good friends. Friends mean everything. So get involved in sports, get involved with friends that are wanting to improve their lives, and stay away from those that are going down a similar path to your parents, and use it as obviously a guide of what not to do.
Got you. And going to your stepfather now, your stepfather was a Green Beret in the Cold War, right?
He was, yeah.
Can you kind of talk us through that and just kind of what he shared with you through those experiences and stuff like that?
Yeah. So he got out before I ever met him, so I wasn't necessarily like a military brat at that point. But he definitely has some interesting stories that he didn't really start sharing with me until recently. Um, when I was in high school, he kind of hinted the stories, and we found this box of Soviet coins and all this stuff. But he was with first group. He learned Russian. First group, they spoke Russian at the time. They don't now very much, but and then he did a lot of stuff in South America. So during the kind of war on drugs, he was very involved with that. I don't know what extent, but um, he definitely has some very interesting experiences. And to this day, he's like an old timer, and they don't really share those experiences, even though they're 40 years ago, um, because obviously it was secret back then. So they're gonna take it with them to the grave.
Yeah. So, like, even though it was like small glimpses, was that what sparked your curiosity to want to go SF and then start maybe had you reading books, or doing anything like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he would like give little stories about how they were out at night, throwing grenades into the lake or something like that, just like being jackasses, little soldiers. So those kind of experiences sounded like an adventure. He spent some time in the Pacific and has all these stories from the Philippines and everything like that. So those it sparked my interest in the special operations community, and just like you said, I started reading books. I started reading a lot of the Afghanistan war because that was going on at the time. Chosen Soldier was one of the first books I picked up, which is obviously following a Q course student through the pipeline of becoming a Green Beret. And I always kind of set my sights on becoming a Green Beret, and having similar experiences, having an adventure just like my stepfather did.
Got you. That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
Like
I
every
mean,
day you
it like especially when you're a kid, like you don't really know what you want to do, but you want to have an exciting life. And I think special operations in general provides so much excitement and just that adventure factor that it was very appealing to me at an early age.
yeah, you're definitely gonna have a ton of stories to tell,
Yeah.
most definitely. But going to your decision to join the army now, for what from what you told me, you kind of already knew for sure that you're going to the army. So were you doing all the planning like your senior year of high school with meeting with recruiters and just kind of seeing the fastest way to get shipped out?
Yeah. So at the time I played football, and my life revolved around football. I ended up getting hurt my senior year, broke my collarbone twice, so I missed essentially half of the games, and that didn't really set me up for success going into college. Like I didn't get the offers I thought I would, all this type of stuff. So I started looking at other options. Obviously, with the military, being in the back of my mind with my stepfather and everything, it was something of interest. And my stepbrother, Alex, actually reached out to a recruiter first. And he just texted me one afternoon. He's like, "Hey, bro, the Army recruiter's coming by the house tonight. You should come home and, be part of the conversation." So I was like, "All right, I'll check it out." And then I just really resonated with everything the recruiter said. He freaking got me, man. So I was actually the first one to enlist between me and my brother, even though he was the one that brought it up. So I enlisted on the delayed entry program in January of my senior year, and then did that delayed entry program until August, which is when I shipped out to basic, August of 2012.
Did you know anything about the 18X at the time?
I did, however, I was too young. So
Oh, that's
my
right.
my plan was I enlisted as EOD, and because I always thought being an engineer and like the explosives part of the job was very cool. Obviously, you're seeing like people downrange mostly struggling with IEDs. So I was like, oh, I want to be a kind of help with that. And then the movie Hurt Locker. So I was like, oh, EOD is freaking it, man. So I joined as EOD, and then my plan was to go there for a couple years until I'm old enough to go to selection, drop the packet, and then make the transition over. Obviously, EOD didn't work out, so I ended up in aviation, and luckily found my way into the 160th.
So where was your basic training at?
I went to Jackson because
Okay.
EOD is not obviously not infantry, so we did the Jackson thing, and then I went out to Fort Lee.
Okay. And I feel everybody in at some point they have that culture shock. When was that moment for you?
The culture shock of joining the military.
Yeah, you're like, oh my god, like almost like what did I get myself into kind of thing.
I would say it was after I failed EOD. They EOD school at Fort Lee is like this kind of system where there's like 300 people in this company, massive. And the fifth floor of this building is where all the dropouts go. So I failed. They said, "All right, you're going to get reclassed. Move me up to the fifth floor. You wait like a month to find out what type of job you're doing." And I ended up getting aircraft structural repair. So got my orders. I'm shipping out to Fort Eustis, and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna take a train." So it was on us at that point. Took a taxi to the train station. I was sitting in this like shitty train station in Virginia, and that's when the culture shock hit me. I was like, dude, what am I doing? Like, I don't know anybody around me. It's me and one other guy throwing these bags into this Greyhound bus going to Fort Eustis to learn a new job because we just failed out of this other one. And I was like, my whole plan is turned up on its, turned upside down, and all this stuff. So that was like that was probably my culture shock. And I was like, dude, I'm in it. I'm like, I'm stuck in I'm at the, needs of the army at this point. So
So once you get to your destination, you get to basic. Would you say basic for you for the most part? Did you get that mentally, physically? Were you mentally and physically challenged, or was it not really a big factor for you?
no, I wasn't really challenged at basic. Kind of going in with that mindset. I think other people can probably resonate with this when you go in with that mindset of like you want to do the hardest thing in the military. Like ultimately, I want to go special forces. So my sights were so much further than just graduating basic. I knew just basic was like a stepping stone. So I never really had like a culture shock. I didn't really, my motivation levels were pretty high all throughout basic. Um, and I think when you go into it as that this is just a stepping stone and a temporary stop on your way to get to where you want to be, it doesn't really impact you as much as like, oh, I'm stuck here at basic for these 12 weeks or whatever it is. So no, I wasn't really affected as much at basic as some other people may have been.
Okay. And in terms of AIT, I want to go to when you volunteer for 160th. So can you just kind of walk us through that and how you were afforded that opportunity to volunteer for the 160th?
Yeah. So obviously my job changed, but my motivation levels didn't. I was still training hard every day. I was rocking on the weekends. I was that little nerdy soldier always, working. And I didn't even know anything about 160th. We just got off a class one day, and they were like, "Hey, these special operations aviation guys are coming by to give a brief." And I walk in there, and they the first thing they do is play this video where it has the DAPs, which is the Blackhawks with the Hellfires on like um, the miniguns on the side and everything. And then they have like the little birds, people fast roping from little birds. And I'm like, this is it, dude. Like, this is what I want to do. So I was like the first, name on the sheet of like volunteering for the 160th. And then like my motivation levels peaked again. I was like, I'm back in it. We're going to special operations. Well, a couple weeks go by. We're getting near graduation at my course, and I haven't heard anything. I get orders for Germany, so I'm going to Katterbach, Germany, and I'm like, oh, I guess like I don't know if I didn't get selected for 160th, like what's going on. We graduate. I still have orders for Germany. I bought the plane ticket. Like my bags are packed to go to Germany, and I walk into the people that cut the orders and everything like that, and I'm like, hey, a couple weeks ago I volunteered for the 160th, and I still haven't received orders. Like I'm supposed to leave to Germany. What can we do? And they got on the phone with like the SOAR recruiters, all this type of stuff, and ended up cutting me orders on the spot, cutting my Germany orders, and then buying me a plane ticket to Fort Campbell. So I was like sick, and last minute got like into my foot in the door into special operations.
So what is the mission set of the 160th?
Yeah, they're essentially the taxi drivers, the pilots, the aviation platform for special operations. So for Navy SEALs, 75th Ranger Regiment, obviously special forces, anybody that's going in doing high risk raids, they're likely flying in with the 160th.
Okay. I also didn't know there was MOSs within the 160th. I thought it was just pilots.
No,
Um,
it's a lot like the 75th, as you know how they have a sheet of MOSs.
yeah.
All they have support MOSs, all this type of stuff. So yeah.
So and you also mentioned too, like when you went to volunteer and you got orders for 160th, that you didn't categorize it as a selection. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so when you go to 160th, the first thing you have to go through is green platoon. They have two green platoons. One of them is EGP, which is enlisted green platoon, and then OGP, which is obviously officer green platoon. And it's broken up into 4 phases where they go over combat skills. One of them being land nav, medical training, combatives, and then weapons. And it's somewhat like a selection in the sense that you have to maintain the standard, or you have to, reach the standard. You get smoked all the time. You do all these crazy layouts. They have rucks that are like ruck marches. They have a day called Black Day where you literally just get smoked for like 20 hours. So there's a lot of physical, very strenuous things that you go through in the course, but it's not necessarily a selection in the sense of you can finish the course and then they still tell you you're not selected. Typically, it's like if you don't quit and you do everything that you're supposed to, you meet the standard, you will pass. You will go to the 160th. As opposed to obviously SFAS, you can complete everything. You can complete the trek at the end and be a non-select and still go back to your unit. So in that aspect, it's a little bit different, but it's still a very challenging course.
Okay. So once you make it, kind of like what's the lifestyle like, and are you able to really enjoy it, or you're still like, I want to be Green Beret. I'm looking past this kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I really bought into the 160th. They took care of me really well. It was a very professional environment, and I genuinely enjoyed working for it. I took a lot of pride in being a Night Stalker, but I didn't really resonate with the job I was doing. I liked the unit and the mission we were completing, but I felt that I could do more in my individual job. So that's what ultimately led me to going SF, or making the jump over, even though I really enjoyed the 160th. But yeah, I mean, that's probably my favorite unit that I've served in to this day, unit wise, is the 160th, and I have nothing but good things to say about it.
So at what point did you make that decision to go put that packet in for SFAS? Because I know I don't know if it was like an NCO or an officer, but they're like, oh, like don't get it twisted. Like this organization is not a stepping stone. So I can only imagine that kind of like oh crap, like well dang, I want to go SF.
Yeah, no, when I first got to the 160th, the CSM of the entire 160th walked into our like welcome brief, and he had just got done running that morning. This dude was like a super fit guy, and one of the first things he said is, "This is not a stepping stone unit. Like this is it. You know, first battalion in the 160 or 160 that they refer to as the show." So there's a lot of pride built up around it, and the fact that it's not a stepping stone unit, because for aviation it's not. Like it's pretty much end game. So um but what led me to it is I went on a couple deployments with the 160th, and I we supported a lot of the special forces operations, and kind of seeing their operations from an outsider perspective. You know, we're looking at the ISR feed, and I'm like watching it inside the talk and everything like that. I just felt like I was on the sidelines, and I wanted to be more involved. Although what we were doing was providing a necessary support for those operations, I wanted to be the guy on the ground. I wanted to be the guy at the tip of the spear, so to say. So that's what led me to that. And as soon as I got back, I was like, hey, you know, I went into my first sergeant's office. I was like, this is what I'm doing, man. I'm going to selection.
So once you get to SFES, what's in processing like?
At SFAS,
Yeah.
I remember the first thing we did was you made this like, I got there, you know, at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It was really late, day of traveling. And we made this giant kind of pyramid of MREs because that's all you eat the whole time. So they put you to work as soon as you get there. And we were just loading MREs in the trucks, like stacking MREs for hours. Because that's the MREs the entire class is going to eat for the duration of the training. So there wasn't necessarily like a paper, like sit down, you know, sign your thing, and this is the in processing. Like you get to work, and then they take care of that stuff as you go.
And how long was SFAS at the time? Because at the time it was 2 weeks, right?
No, I went when it was 21 days. So it went to 2 weeks. They did obviously the 2 weeks in hell, I think was the show on Netflix or whatever, and then they ended up going back to the 21 days.
Okay. And how is SFAS structured? Because I know like in SFRE they have like amber phase, red phase. Like how is SFAS structured throughout those 21 days?
So the first week, they refer to as gate week. You do a lot of your runs and rucks. Second week is land nav, and then the final week is team week, which sucks. That's by far the worst week.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I hear I think one of the regiment guys I had on the podcast, he told me that was brutal too. Because depending on how good your team is, you may get back, you may finish early, or you may get back late and you got little to no sleep and you're bruised up like terribly.
Seriously. Yeah, and they wouldn't let anybody sleep until the last team got back. So luckily,
Wow.
the teams I was on were pretty good. But we had free time, but you're not allowed to sleep until the last team gets there. So they would get in at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. Mind you, they started at 7 o'clock that morning, so they're freaking working all day and night. They get, I don't know, hour and a half. We got 2 hours of sleep maybe, and then we're right back at it.
Dude, that's just think about it, just hurts me, man.
Oh, it was
So
gnarly.
what is the PT test consist of? Is it the usual push up, sit ups, run, ruck, like all those stuff like that?
Yeah, when I went, I've heard that it recently changed. I know um Green Beret Chronicles just went over some of the changes that were implemented recently. But when I went, it was just a standard APFT. So push ups, sit ups, run. And yeah, there were lots of crazy fit guys, but I was kind of middle of the pack during the gate week portion of it. But yeah, it was just the regular APFT at the time, and then the pull ups at the end.
Do you remember your numbers at all by any chance?
I max push ups, max sit ups. I think I ran around a 12:45 run, and then I think I got like 12 pull ups or something like that. But there was this guy I went to selection with. He was this like stud, man. He was so athletic. Like this dude was jacked. Everyone thought this guy's just gonna have no problem with selection. Well, at the APFT, they had these like little clickers, you know, the little counters, and they click it every time you do a push up. So if you count the clicks, you know if your push ups are counting or not. Well, he just did. I think it was like 71 push ups at the time for 17 to 21 range, The dude just went down, busted up 71 push-ups in like a minute 20, and then stood up. And that night, they call out everybody. Everyone gets information. They call out the roster numbers of people who are getting sent home for either failing or not doing well enough on the PT test. And he got called. He got sent home. And the reason was he didn't do push-ups for the entire 2 minute section. So even though this guy's like a freaking physical beast, because he didn't put out 100% effort, they sent him home.
Yeah, man, it's that character.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what I feel like they're looking for based on your content and Green Beret Chronicles, etc. That they look for. How was land navigation for you? Because I know most people fear that, and that's where a lot of attrition can come from. How was land navigation throughout SFAS for you?
Land nav wasn't too bad. The terrain was really open, so I felt like I was always under control, like knew where I was at some point. We're at every point throughout the course. There were some draws we call draw monsters out there that absolutely ate me up and made me question whether my compass was even right or not. But other than the draws, like I didn't have very much of an issue. I did go in January, so we had a couple nights out at Land Nav that were just balls cold, man. Like we had one night with like a wind chill that was -5 or something like that. So you'd wake up and your entire sleeping bag was just covered in ice. And I always say that was the hardest part of land nav for me, was just like waking up and getting out of my little sleeping bag. It's like you're out there, like you have no choice but to get out of your sleeping bag, but you're like, man, this really sucks. I gotta put these cold ass boots on and start rucking with this heavy ass pack. Like that. So I think the mental aspect of just getting started when it was that cold was the hardest part. But when I got moving, like land nav really wasn't that bad. I felt I was a big hunter. So I spent a lot of time out in the woods, like chasing deer and everything like that. So I was very comfortable in that environment, and I found all my points with plenty of time to spare. I was chilling by the fire, eating MREs, so it wasn't honestly wasn't too bad.
Okay, and at some point, you're gonna get tested at during selection. When was that for you?
That was team week.
Team
Your
week.
team week, yeah. There was this particular event we did where everything you do, you have a rucksack on, and I remember I had the rucksack on. We had 4 people on this giant log, and obviously you have a rucksack, so the log is just sitting on the back of your neck, and I just felt like my spine was gonna snap. Like I just felt so much pressure, and we would switch out like every 30 seconds. We had like 4 guys on the log, one guy just filling in. So you'd get, I think it was like every 2 minutes or every minute 30, you'd get a break, and that minute 30 of work like was testing me. We had 5 miles to go with this log, and that was like the time I was like, "Damn, this is real shit."
No, yeah, so coming to the end of SFAS, I'm sure it's nerve wracking because, like you said, you can complete the whole course and not get selected. How was that experience when you're coming down to the who's getting selected, who's not getting selected?
It honestly felt surreal when I went to selection. Although I'd been motivated and I wanted to be a Green Beret, since I was a freaking teenager, you still compare yourself to others. And I talk about when I showed up to selection, I had like imposter syndrome. Like I was looking at all these dudes that were like 6'3", just super lean, super jacked, extremely fit guys. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I belong here. Like these guys are the ones that are gonna make it. But I knew I wasn't gonna quit. Like quitting was never an option. I I knew it was 21 days. I'm gonna see this 21 days through, regardless of whether or not I get selected. So a lot of those guys that I thought were gonna be crushing it, some of them disappeared in the middle of the night. Some of them got dropped. Some of them, obviously, like I said, didn't put the effort out and ended up getting sent home on those grounds. But nearing the end, I remember standing information outside the building where they go and tell you whether or not you got selected, and it just felt surreal. Like it didn't really hit me that I had such a great chance of getting selected, because for a large part of it, like I was just going along day by day, like didn't really think about the outcome. I was just focused on surviving. There was never a point where it like hit me that I'm gonna get selected. I sat down at the computer dude told me I got selected, and I was like, holy shit! Like, I guess I'm gonna be a Green Beret. This is crazy.
Yeah, man, I can only imagine your confidence and just morale just goes through the roof. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Through
mean,
that.
yeah, because like I said, I didn't really. I kind of had that imposter syndrome going through it, and I was like, man, these guys are the real deal, and I'm just like, I'm just surviving, doing my thing, going day by day. And then when I actually heard the words, I was like, man, this is pretty cool.
And kind of going to like the tips aspect of it for future candidates. Going into selection, you're hoping for the best. For the most part, of course. What are some things you need to have like squared away before showing up to selection, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I would say injuries. Everyone trains hard to go to selection, or should train hard. And you know what you have to do, and you know where you have to be physically to get there. And a lot of times when we train, we develop nagging injuries, whether I had an Achilles issue, people have hips, shoulders, all this type of stuff. And if you go to selection with one of those nagging injuries, it'll get highlighted, and a lot of people get sent home because they can't deal with the pain of it, or they legitimately can't go further. So I would say take care of your injuries, and take recovery very serious in your train up to go to selection.
And what are some underrated things people don't take serious? Like for example, foot care.
Yeah, foot care is huge. You know, I I've lost like 4 toenails. I started developing blisters under my toenails at selection. I admittedly like didn't have the best foot care at selection. My boots were a little bit too small, so my toes were pounding into the front of them whenever I would ruck. So just getting comfortable with your gear. Wear the boots that you're gonna take to selection. Get them worn in. Do a couple of rucks with a heavy pack that like equivalent to what you will carry at selection, so you know where the hot spots are, whether you develop toe issues like I did, and really just be mindful of how your body's feeling going into selection, because like I said, every little issue is going to get highlighted.
And then in terms of land navigation, anything you can provide with that.
Yeah, I always tell guys, worry less about like the specifics of military land navigation. Obviously, it's good to have the knowledge, but just get outside and get comfortable in a wooded environment. Like, there's so many apps now, like Onyx Hunt, that shows you some public lands, and it tracks your GPS location. So you shouldn't be afraid to get outside and go get lost, because the technology we have these days, like, you're never truly lost. But you should experience that feeling, because I think a lot of people don't have very much experience outdoors, which I think was an advantage on my part with the hunting, obviously. And they get into the environment where they're away from everybody. They don't, and then they lose where they're at, right? They don't know where they're at on the map, and they just panic, or they get in one of those draws and it just eats them alive. They panic. It affects their ability to make intelligent decisions in regards to finding their point, and then it just spirals from there. So, in regards to land nav, just get outside, get comfortable. They have a great land nav course at selection. Like, going into it, they ensure that you really know what you're doing. So worry less about that aspect of it, and more about just feeling comfortable in the outdoors by yourself.
Okay. And then kind of going to the Q course now. When you enter the Q course, is your confidence level like skyrocketed, or you're still staying pretty humble and just calm, cool, collective?
Yeah, I still stay pretty humble. I showed up to the Q course, and I felt that same like imposter syndrome type of feeling. You pass selection, you get this high, and you go back to your unit, and you're the only one that passed selection at your unit, and you kind of are riding that high throughout that. And then when it comes to the Q course, like, everyone's in the same boat as you are. Like, you're ground zero again, and it's time to work. So I kind of got into that same mindset, and then started taking it day by day again.
And did you notice the cadre kind of loosening up a little bit, more teachable? Because from what I hear, like during selection, they're kind of like almost like robots. Like they're not yelling at you. They're just kind of like looking at you, may give you like a little grin here and there. Like, did they loosen up a little more?
Yeah, I mean, it depended on the cadre. Obviously, like at selection, it's a gentleman's course. Like there's a standard. If you don't meet the standard, you're gone. It's very unemotional. When I went to the Q course, there were some cadre that um, we described as like tab protectors. Like they just had it out to get people. They always messed with you. Like we had, nights where dudes were um they had them rucked up, face painted, and they just had to patrol the barracks for 12 hours. Like they just messed with dudes like that. So it I honestly the cadre um were not as chill at the Q course than they were at selection, in my experience. Most of the cadre at the Q, well, I would say about half the cadre at the Q course would just like intentionally screw with the candidates in the course. And I mean, they're testing them. They're finding out whether or not they would want to serve on a team with them. So I kind of get where they're coming from, but it changed. Their demeanors changed, and it wasn't necessarily any looser from selection to the Q course.
And what is the overall intent of the Q course? Like, what is it consisting of?
Like the phases of the Q course.
Yeah, like overall, like what's the purpose of it? Like, because I think you're blending in cultural awareness, like all these different training exercises, right?
Yeah, so you have the phases of the Q course, which back when I went through, I'm not 100% sure what they're doing now. We had the intro to UW, which is unconventional warfare, and that phase had another land nav course, which was a bitch at the time. That land nav course is actually really hard, harder than the or the star course in my opinion. And then you went out to SUT, which is like their small unit tactics. It's very similar to the things you would learn at Ranger School, not as long. And then you go into SEER, and then you have your specialty schools, your MOSs, obviously your Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. And then you come back together for Robin Sage, which is like the culminating event where you do a mock unconventional warfare campaign in Pineland, which is a fictional country. And that's like your pass or go. And then now they graduate after Robin Sage and then spend 6 months in language school.
Was there any major failures you had in the Q course or recycles?
I'd recycled. I was in the Charlie course. Unfortunately, we had an accident where there was an explosion and lost one of my friends, and other people got injured. So I took a compassionate recycle so I could go to his funeral. And then like after that, it was an accident at the Q course. So I was like honestly so like afraid of explosives to an extent. It's like that's what killed my friend. So going back into the Q course after that event or going back into the Charlie course, I was like nervous. I'd be shaking anytime I mess with explosives, and that led to me failing the FTX. So after that point, I recycled, did the entire Charlie course again, and then ultimately went to Sage.
Okay. And how was once you finished everything, how's graduation for you?
It was a good feeling, man. My stepdad was there. I mean, it was cool to put the beret on for the first time in front of him. Kind of keep that lineage going. So it was a good experience. And then it was kind of weird though because my class was the first class where they changed it to where you graduated immediately after Robin Sage and then went to language school as, like a Green Beret wearing it. So and there was a lot of pushback in the community saying like, we're not fully qualified Green Berets. So it was like a half graduation. Like I put the Green Beret on, put the tab on, but you still feel like there's work to do before you've actually earned it. So for the next 6 months, we were like, sort of Green Berets. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So did your stepfather put his beret on as well?
No.
That would have been
He showed
dope.
up. He was working for Homeland Security at the time, so he just showed up in his suit with his little lapel and everything. But yeah, I've he didn't wear his, but that would have been a badass picture.
Hell yeah, dude. And going into like Q course tips now, you'd be surprised, because I hear people still quit even after they get selected because whether it's because family or they're like, man, this pipeline is freaking long. How did you stay level headed and not get discouraged even when you got recycled or that occurrence happened where you're scared to touch the explosive and just kept pressing forward?
Yeah. I mean, I felt pretty good up until that point. I hadn't recycled anything. I'd done well on all my tests. That point really tested me.
Oh, I apologize. I remember you did a compassionate recycle, but nonetheless,
No,
you
I
still
mean,
had that. You still struggled with like the
so I recycled.
mentality part.
Yeah, I recycled twice. The one of them was a compassionate. And then the next one, like I said, I was just so nervous, like messing with explosives after that event that I was. It led to me making a mistake at the FTX, and I got actually recycled. So I got academically recycled then, and then that time frame was I think the biggest test throughout my Q course, and like really put into perspective why I'm doing this. Um, Obviously, when that you know the gravity of that starts to sit in, you start questioning whether this is something you really want to do, all that type of stuff. But ultimately, like I knew I wanted to be on a team and do the job overseas. So that's what led me to just pushing through it.
Got you. And any other tidbits of advice you could pass on for people in the for the Q course?
Yeah, man, just take it day by day. Don't get too wrapped up with how long you're there. Just enjoy the time you have. You have lots of downtime during the Q course between phases and stuff like that. Like use that time to build relationships with the guys at the Q course because you will run into each other later down the road in the regiment. Um, have a good time, like work hard and then like I said, just don't self-select. Like you are there because you already were selected and they want to train you. So just, put your head down, take it day by day, and you'll get through it.
Okay, and let's get into your F and G time now. So as a new guy, how was it checking in?
It was interesting. I PCS'd from Bragg to Carson, and while I was on my PCS leave, I bought a house and everything, and then I got a text from a guy I went to the Q course with, saying, "Hey, like you're coming to this battalion, and you are going to Afghanistan right away." So the battalion was forward. I'm sorry, the company was forward already, and um, I ended up signing in, and then I went through my in processing like really quick at Carson, and then flew over to Afghanistan. So I actually met the dudes for the first time in country.
Okay, and what were you doing to try to gain these guys' trust and respect? Were you just volunteering a lot, quote unquote, being that perfect soldier? What were you doing?
Yeah, working, man. Like, I kind of had a different experience to where I bounced around between different teams, essentially trying out. And every team I went to, I would just, uh, you know, be the worker bee around the camp. Like, I would do all the stuff that nobody wanted to do, or just do anything that I could. I never felt like, I always felt like if I was not doing something, then I wasn't, gonna be considered for that team. So yeah, I worked. I tried to get on as many missions as I possibly could. Um Obviously you want that operational aspect to it. And then I really clicked with the team I ended up on. Became really close friends with a lot of those guys um in a very short amount of time. And then like I said, like going out and completing those missions was like kind of my level of acceptance. I guess going back to the first question you asked me, or one of the first questions you asked me, like what was the the moment where I got the most fulfillment? It wasn't when I got my Green Beret. It was I went to my team. Um, it was probably my third or fourth mission I went out with them, and after the mission, they had these team hats made, which is one of the hats I wear a lot in my videos. And after the mission, they said, "Hey, you know, we want you to join our team when we get back. Here's our team hat," like all this type of stuff. And it was like coming from all the guys, and it just brought a lot of excitement to me.
So, in what group were you assigned to?
10th group.
10th group, and that's in Fort Carson, right?
Yeah, yeah, in Colorado.
Okay. Dang man, that's awesome, man. Yeah, me too. I would wear that hat all the time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not the
it
one
still
you're.
has.
Yeah, I was about to say it's not the one you're wearing right now, right?
It's no, it's not the one I'm wearing now. And it's not the one I wear in my videos. Because the original hat is like super dirty, but I still have it up in my room actually. It's brown and just like stained every possible way you could. Because I wore it, every day in Afghanistan for the remainder of the trip. Like
Yeah.
anytime I wore it for years. So
And in terms of ODA life, how was that for you?
they
Was
loved
it
it, man.
everything you were looking for?
On the team level, yes, absolutely. Like I had a great team, like some of the best friends I'll ever have, and um, just the environment of like coming to work and spending your days with like your best friends and doing cool shit. Like riding four wheelers, going shoot guns, like all this stuff. Yeah, it was a ride, and it was a lot of fun. Like, definitely the best job I ever had in that aspect.
And what's a typical day for you like as a like on the teams?
That's something that I really enjoyed about it is there's no typical day. There's different training events that come up every week. So you walk in, you might um, go to the range, you might be doing maneuver training, like, and you could do so many different things, and you're always preparing for it. You're always getting the gear ready, all this type of stuff. But I would say on a day in garrison when there wasn't a whole lot going on, we just show up, we would do any admin work we needed to do, and then we would just like chill in the team room. A lot of times, I had a team sergeant, one of my, not the first one, but one of the team sergeants I had. He would always yell at us to go home because we had this like ping pong table at work, and we'd be done for the day. It'd be like 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and we'd just be in there drinking a beer and playing ping pong. So yeah, it really varied, but it was a lot of fun. It was like nonstop jokes and poking jokes at people and just laughing the whole time. So it was a good time.
And how many deployments in total were you a part of?
So two with group and then two with the 160th.
And for group, how long are those deployments typically?
They're supposed to be 6 months. Because I joined the Afghanistan one a little bit later, mine wasn't quite six. And then I went to Europe on the next one. And that one was around 4 or 5.
Okay. And was there any deployment where things like almost did went like haywire?
What do you mean, like a mission?
Yeah, like things went south. Like you're in a full blown gunfight. Things are just going crazy.
Yeah. One of the scariest moments I had was we were on a mission, and we were doing a remain over day, a rod. So we got there that night and we cleared the village stuff, and then held up in this compound. And when you do that, you kind of put up defensive fighting positions using sandbags. We'd ruck in the empty sandbags, and then when we get there, we start digging. So we dig these holes to fill these sandbags, and we're waiting all day for the firefight. Like, we can hear the Taliban chatter, all this type of stuff. Well, 20 minutes before the sun went down, it just popped off. Like, there was these green zones about 150 yards from us on two sides, and they just started lighting the compound up. Like, they put themselves in position to start shooting through doors, so like rounds are coming into the compound, all this type of stuff. Um, and then we had a mortar pit in the center of it, and we brought a shit ton of mortars. And they were all laying out there, flat. So I was we did like rotating guard duty during the rod, and I was not on guard duty at the time, so I was like in one of the buildings kind of bullshitting. So I run out there, and I start unpackaging these mortars so we can start hanging them into the green zones. And I unpackage enough for them to start hanging them and everything like that. So I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go up on the roof. So I start climbing the ladder. As soon as I get to the roof, uh, uh, an explosion happened right where I was just standing. Huge. Everyone's like knocked. I look back down, and the dudes that were down in the mortar pit are, you just see smoke. And in the back of my mind, I was like, fuck, man, they're dead. Um, and then like the smoke clears, and one of them like gets up and he's like, I'm good. And he starts hanging mortars again. And what happened was, right where the mortar pit was is where we dug for the sandbags. So the enemy mortar that got dropped in our compound went into the hole instead of landing on the flat ground next to the mortars. So the hole that we dug for the sandbag, which is probably 10 inches, 12 inches deep, literally saved our lives. And then shortly after that, F-15s came on and started, blowing up the tree lines, everything like that, and the firefight kind of recited, and we took off. So, but yeah, that was probably my closest kind of sketchiest moment in Afghanistan was that mortar round that luckily landed in that hole that we dug out instead of 6 inches over. If that landed 6 inches over, it would have landed in the mortar pit where we had all ours, and it would have been a bad day.
How was it like to the plane ride there, like to the objectives? Like, is it like freaking cool for you or like not really?
Um, it's a very therapeutic experience. You go through a wide range of emotions. Um, it's on one hand, there's so much chaos leading up to the mission. You're trying to get all of the Afghans, everything of that into the helicopter, and get them going. And then you finally get on the helicopter and you get to relax. You have a 45-minute flight to the objective, and you finally get to just chill and sit on the helicopter. And then they call out 10 minutes. You get a little more nervous. They call it 5 minutes. You get a little more nervous. They call it 1 minute. This is really when it really sets in, and you feel that nervous excitement. Like it's time to go. Like you accept whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Like if we're about to get lit up on the ground, like we're going to give them hell going out. Um, and then it finally lands. You get off the helicopter, it takes off, and I never had like a hot infill like where we're getting shot at coming in. So all my experiences were the helicopter lands, it takes off, and then it's dead quiet. And then you start operating, you find out where you're going, you locate the objectives, and you start moving to it. So yeah, that ride in is always a range of emotions where it's excitement mixed with a touch of fear, mixed with this sense of adrenaline, this huge adrenaline rush. And then you get there and you're in it. So yeah, I really enjoyed those helicopter rides in.
And just kind of cap off the ODA life from the Green Beret life in general, or topic in general. Uh, what was your favorite part about being a Green Beret, and then also what was your least favorite part about being a Green Beret?
Yeah, my favorite part about being a Green Beret was my teammates. Doing all that stuff with your team, obviously having those friendships that you develop through shared experiences, difficult experiences, doing fun things, getting to travel the world. Like that, it's an irreplaceable time in my life that I'll be thankful for forever. And then on the flip side of that, above the kind of team level, the bureaucracy is what I really didn't like. You're still in the army. You're still controlled by the organization. So um, that is something that I really came to resent. And having that lack of control in my life above my even team level was ultimately what led me to getting out. It's like I talked to you about it offline, but I came from my parents' roof where I was controlled to a certain extent, to join the military where I was controlled to a certain extent. I wanted to become a Green Beret so I would have more autonomy, which I did. But you do and you don't. Like you're gone a lot. Sometimes you don't resonate with what the hell you're doing. So it started to take a toll, and then ultimately I just wanted to regain control over my life. And it's sad that it came at the expense of me not being able to do the job that I wanted to do, and leaving my team and everything. But ultimately, it just came down to me wanting more freedom.
Got it. And that's kind of lead into my next topic, which is leadership. Try to touch on that topic a little bit because you've been exposed to good, but like you said, you've also been exposed to poor. What in your eyes separates a good leader from a bad leader?
Taking care of the guys, man. The good leaders are the ones that genuinely care about the guys that they're serving with, the guys on their team, and the guys that they have a responsibility to lead. And part of leadership is, the Army definition is to essentially inspire and motivate the soldiers below you to accomplish a shared mission. So um, the ability to shield the guys from kind of the bullshit that goes with the bureaucracy of the military, and then going to bat for them when necessary, and, developing that mutual respect. I think a lot of times the problem that leaders have in the military is career progression. They get so wrapped up with, you know, appeasing the guy that's above them instead of genuinely taking care of the guys that, they should be serving. And it leads to this disconnect between soldier and leader, and leads to guys getting out, leads to, micromanaging, all this type of stuff. And I think that's a big, deep rooted issue within the military right now.
Yeah, which is crucial, because following you because I want to follow you versus following the rank are two big things that we have to fix. What I mean, putting the right leaders in the right positions because they earned it, and not only when they earn it, but their platoon or their squad or whatever the case may be, they vouch for them as well. They're like, man, this guy's freaking awesome. Like he should stay in this position, for sure.
Yeah.
How do you propose that? How do you? Is there anything you propose to that the military can do to get better leaders in positions? To put their soldiers in the best positions and prevent what's happening now, which is recruiting shortage, etc.
Yeah, it's tough because the thing is like, it doesn't just start with the lowest rank. It trickles down from the officer ranks. The way officers progress is by getting a good OER, which is officer evaluation report. And who writes those OERs is their leaders. So they need to essentially suck up to their leaders in a certain aspect, and that it's similar on the enlisted side. So what you end up getting is all these guys that are more concerned with taking care of the people above them and less concerned with taking care of the people below them. Whereas I think it should be opposite in the sense of whether they're able to actually lead their platoon, their squad, their company, whatever it is, to genuinely want to accomplish the mission and put forth the effort required. Going back to my experiences, like I've had, leaders that were toxic in the workplace. I've had amazing leaders. And the difference is like when you have a toxic leader and he comes in, he's like, hey, we need to do this. Everyone's like, wow, I don't really want to do that. And like starts getting pushed back. Like there's not really motivation to do it. Whereas the leader that has taken care of their guys, they've shielded them, they genuinely care about their well-being. When he comes in and he's like, hey, I know this sucks, but we got to do it. Everyone's like, no, we got it. Like, we're going to freaking knock it out because we know that this is like what you need to get done. I respect this guy so much that I don't care if I'll be here till midnight. Like, we're going to get it done.
Yeah, 100%. Um, and then that's exactly how it is. Like the good leaders I come across. I mean, I'll go through thick and thin for them. Like you said, like if it takes all night, if it takes days, I respect them so much that I want to make them look good, which
Right.
is another good characteristic of being like a quote unquote Joe, I guess is what they might call him in the military. Making your leadership look good, and it just helps out your squad, your platoon, just overall. So to the decision to get out, once you make that decision and you're kind of itching towards your ETS, is it kicking in like dang, like having to figure things out, because the military supplements a lot of things, housing, a paycheck every month, all those different things. Was that on your mind?
Not necessarily like the housing part of it. I think I knew I would figure that out whether or not like I started investing in real estate a couple years ago, so I had places to go. But I think more so I was just concerned with like finding fulfillment. Coming from that environment, sorry.
You're good.
Coming from that environment, where you really enjoy your job. My biggest fear was like getting out of the military and then not enjoying what I do anymore and kind of just going through the motions of life, which is a challenge. And admittedly, it came with some different challenges than I expected. I kind of prepared for that type of thing. I started some, different ventures or going down different paths and decided like this isn't for me. Like I want to do something I see myself doing long term. And that's kind of how I stumbled on this whole social media thing. Is like these younger guys, 18, 19, 20, 22, whatever, started contacting me, asking me questions. They wanted to go down a similar path and, they needed some guidance. So being able to correspond with them, provide my experience. I never steer anyone in a particular direction, but just giving them some insight of what it kind of looks like on the inside and paint them a realistic picture, and watch them, their motivation of like when I was 22 years old doing a selection, kind of getting to that point, like it has really provided me with that fulfillment. So yeah, I think getting out of the military, it's daunting, especially being someone that is so institutionalized. Essentially, like I never really experienced my adult life on my own, um, and you have endless opportunities. So you're super excited about, you can go anywhere in the world and do any job, whatever. Like uh there, the sky's the limit, but at the same time there's so many opportunities out there that you don't really know which one to invest your time in, and that starts to become frustrating and take a toll on you because you start investing here and you're like, I don't like it, and you're kind of comparing it to the satisfaction you got in your old job, and then you change directions and all that type of stuff. So I think it's just a matter of trying different things out, finding exactly what you get fulfillment from, what you want your life to look like, and making it happen.
Yeah, I agree. Trial and error.
Yeah.
If it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick. You know what I mean? Just keep trying. Um, and it's more fulfilling like that anyways, to trying different things. You know what I mean? Because we only have a short time on this earth, so it's good just to kind of get a mixture of everything. And even if
Yeah.
you are confused, as long as you just keep pushing through, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Man, you'll be just fine. Things happen. Things happen when they're supposed to happen. It's hard in the moment when you're broken and you feel like you don't know what's going on. But everything, I really do feel like everything happens for a reason. Whether something didn't happen because such and such and you were bummed out and you really wanted to go there, but it didn't happen, whatever the case may be, or you went down or let's say military, you wanted to go to this soft route, but it didn't work out. You went to this other soft route, whatever the case may be, you just kind of fill in the blank. You just have to keep pushing forward, and um, you'll figure it out for sure. But
Absolutely.
going into what you're doing now with mentoring the next generation of not just soft, but special operations forces. I guess is that how you say it? Special operations forces.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just like younger men, not
Younger
even
men,
like,
yeah.
yeah, not even necessarily like special operations in particular. We talked about it, but I'm not like the special forces
Mhm.
assessment and selection like guru,
Guru.
because I'm not, yeah, I'm just not connected to that
Yeah,
lifestyle, that environment as much. So I can't provide, and I don't want to provide as much information as like Green Beret Chronicles and those guys. But I think it's just being a good example for younger guys, and like showing them that you can do whatever you want with your life. Like going back to kind of what I said in the beginning, like I was that kid that just wanted to um, make everyone around me proud of me. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I wanted to make my family proud. I wanted to do all this stuff. And some of the things I did wasn't necessarily because I genuinely wanted to, but because I knew it would make other people proud. And looking back, I mean, I wouldn't change anything because I've learned from those experiences. But I think someone in that particular situation, if they can hear that and kind of identify early on a different path that they genuinely resonate with, and it's something they could see themselves doing more long term, then that's a win for me. And that's something that I get a lot of, fulfillment out of, is like providing that info, just helping younger guys out, and, you know, providing that guidance, inspiring them to think for themselves.
And you're doing that through your YouTube channel, your Discord, um, and your Patreon. Just kind of going through each one. Like I know, well, for the most part, like I know your YouTube channel, like you said, it's a lot of guidance. You're just giving like mental and physical advice. Kind of walk us through what the purpose of your Discord and your Patreon is, and what it consists of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the Discord's a platform to get more like in depth, I guess, one on one, or not one on one, but more in depth conversation. People can go in there and ask questions. You're not limited to, the amount of text you can put in the comment section. Everyone there is, down a similar path of self improvement, all this type of stuff. It's a very positive community. You can just go in and ask questions. And then the Patreon is kind of a place where I post daily workouts. I do like more of like mindset tip videos that I don't put up on the YouTube, and things like that, to where it's like, now this is the implementation. So I guess the Discord is more of like the idea of the guidance of it, and then the Patreon is more of the implementation. Like these are the workouts that I would do in this situation, training up for the military in general or career in special operations, and then some mindset tips to get through it.
Yeah, and as someone who is in the Discord, I highly recommend it. I really like it. Like I gotta check your the Patreon that you created. I haven't been able to check that out yet, but I definitely want to subscribe to that. So yeah, if y'all see this, definitely take advantage of all those three different platforms: his YouTube channel, his Discord, and his Patreon. That I'll find the links. I'll try to get the links from John, and then I'll put them in the description or the description box. But that's it, man. Yeah, that's before we conclude. Is there what's the, I guess going back to kind of my first question, the meaning of life, like what is it that you're looking to, what's the big vision now? Like I know you kind of said what you were saying right now, but what's the big vision till your time on this earth is just gone? As weird as that sounds, till your
No,
time
I hear you,
expires.
man. And we never know when that's coming. But
Yeah.
my big vision is just to keep doing what I'm doing. I know this requires consistency. I want to reach as many people as I can and be a positive or a source of positivity for them. Provide more info on, training. I talk about when I was training as a young soldier to go to selection or do all this crazy stuff. Like I was doing these crazy workouts. I was just killing myself in the gym every day. And now I've taken more of a athletic approach. I talk about like we when you volunteer to be a soldier, you volunteer especially in combat arms, you're essentially volunteering to be a professional athlete. And I think we need to start taking care of our bodies just as a professional athlete would. So I try to provide workouts that it's training smart and not just like killing yourself in the gym. It's training developing building blocks to where over a long period of time you'll see tremendous progress as opposed to just testing your mind, which I think those are necessary every now and then, but on a consistent basis it's hard to sustain. um but long term, man, I see myself continuing that. I see myself reinvesting and making it bigger and bigger, adding more things. I want to add like yoga and some specific recovery sessions that are led by professional instructors. So on that professional aspect, and then on my personal side, I have a fiance. We're gonna get married in the spring. We want to take a big sabbatical and uh, go to Europe for a couple months, and then eventually get some property out in the woods somewhere and develop a little kind of homestead type of property and live my life out there, providing value for those that I can.
Got you. And actually, I just have one more before I conclude the episode and just kind of close it out. For that guy, whether younger or older, who's curious, they have that curious mind of wanting to go down some kind of special operations, wanted to join some special operation organization, but they're second guessing themselves. They're overthinking it. They don't think they're good enough. They don't know where to start. They don't know how to start. Whatever the case may be, what kind of guidance can you give to them?
Yeah, man, just start. Identify a path you want to go down and just take a step. The man that loves walking will go a lot further than the man that loves the destination. So, just get started. Don't worry about whether you're going to make it or not. Like we all know that there's a possibility you could get hurt, non-selected, whatever. Just focus on getting through the training. Like take a approach if you're going to selection or you're going to RASP or you're going to EGP, whatever it is, like just commit to getting through the day and getting through the course and then putting 100% out there and letting the rest take care of itself. I'm a believer that everything ultimately happens for a reason. So if, you weren't selected and you learn something from that experience that you can go apply to another avenue of life, like you're better for it. So I would say if you want to go down that path, just start working towards it. Go do it and you might surprise yourself.
Yeah, and I want to say this too because I want to give my little bit, I guess, inspiration, I guess you could say, to that person. And I'm probably gonna butcher this. I'm not gonna get exact, but there was this cowboy flowing across the internet. He was giving like really good advice, like just bearded up, like this is this cool guy. But on one of his videos, he was like, "Hey, like one day, just go somewhere quiet, like just you, whether that's in your room, hotel, whatever the case may be, right? And take time to write your obituary. And once you write it, ask yourself, am I okay with what is on this obituary? And then you have your answer. And then that would be even more of a boost to get to where you want to go or stop making excuses. And every time you and even when you do revert back, because you're probably gonna revert back to I'm not good enough, etc. Look back on that and be like, no, like I have to, man. Like I have one shot at life. I have to make something of myself.
I love that, man. Write your obituary. Backwards plan. You know, backwards plan is a big thing in the military. Like you look at your mission, you backwards plan a timeline off of that. So write your obituary, zoom out, and then backwards plan what you got to do.
Yeah, man. You can put that on your YouTube channel if you want.
Dude, that's good. That's really good.
But man, guys, that was an awesome episode. I'm maybe even see if John wants to maybe bring him on for part 2, kind of go more in depth. I know there was certain stuff that we weren't able to really kind of elaborate on, but we can elaborate on if we, do a part 2 or something like that. So if John has the time, John is up to it. We'll definitely bring him on for part 2. But first,
John's
Green Beret,
it.
yes, sir. So that's it, guys. Please like, share, subscribe, share these stories, man. Like I said, someone somewhere might need to hear this, needs to listen to this, whether it's John or whoever else I've interviewed thus far. Just please share their stories. Like I said, stories are meant to be shared. They're not meant to be kept. Someone could use it. But with that being said, that's it, guys. See y'all next time.